Welcome in, Jason Will, man. We are so excited to have you on the show today.
Man, I'm blessed to be here. Thank y'all so much for having me.
If there's anybody that I know that can give us some insight into the importance of investing in yourself, being learning based, attending events, whatever we might call it, wherever we might go today on this podcast, it's you. And so I'm stoked to have you on the show.
Well, listen, nothing's off limits, guys. So I'm an open book. So ask me anything.
Well, here's a question.
Now, be careful.
Yeah, because when you open the door to the stallion, there's no telling what's going to happen. I don't ever know what I would say until literally it's coming out. We're kind of one of those that jump off a diving board and wait to see if there's water after the fact. So, all right, so
I can handle it. I promise.
So here's a question: when we think of investing in ourselves, going to events, attending mastermind groups, that is like where it starts for us. It seems like from what I know about you, that's kind of where you kind of took off in your career. But help us understand, like, when you decided that was going to be the best fit for you to grow your business and help others determine whether or not that's something they should be doing.
Well, I mean, it probably started at an early age because I've never been the smartest kid in class, but I've always tried to sit by them. You know, and that's basically the concept, right? About going to these masterminds, at least for me. I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room. I know for a fact that there are people in these rooms or in these auditoriums or conference halls that are way smarter than me. So I'm there to learn. And I think, you know, a lot of people have to, it's a humbling process. You have to humble yourself to be able to take this information in and absorb it. But, you know, there's that part of me who wants to sit by the smartest kid in school, but there was also that punk teenager in me that always thought he knew everything, if that made sense. So, you know, I kind of had to make peace with those two, you know, opposing forces in my mind. And real estate, being in 100% commission-based sales, you know, it will humble you pretty fast.
All right, walk me through that, because I know there's a backstory to how you just said that. How did that actually play out for you in real estate?
Well, you know, I got my real estate license in 2004 and went to work for one of the top training companies, you know, in the nation, Keller Williams, and I initially went to the real estate office for the realtor that helped Diane and I buy our first home, and got turned away. They were saying, in a very nice way, they said, Jason, listen, everybody here has 15, 20, 25 years experience. We don't have a training program for new agents. They literally said, you need to go check out Keller Williams. And I did, but I didn't take advantage of any of the resources at Keller Williams, at least not for about 4 years. So, you know, I just thought that the people that were in these training classes, they were all looked a little older. You know, they were there drinking the coffee, eating the donuts. And I just thought, I just didn't think I had the time. This is just how naive and ignorant I was. I was like, I don't have the time to sit in a classroom and listen to somebody talk when I need to be out talking to people. I'm from a sales family. You know, my dad's a career salesman. I've seen enough of that to know that, you know, it's relationships, it's conversations. And I just thought, hey, that's what I need to be doing, is just out meeting people. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And it was, you know, a lot of stress, you know, a lot of financial stress. But I would literally, just to paint a picture for the audience, I would be on the couch most of the week during the week, like Monday through Friday, or I would be pacing my house or just racking my brain. But most of the time, just stressed out at home, quarantined, because I didn't know what to do. The only thing I knew how to do was hold open houses. So there would be several weekends where I would do a morning shift and an afternoon shift. And it was 2004, guys. So, I mean, I'd literally be putting an open house sign in the ground and somebody would pull over and go, where's the house? We want to buy it. So that was the other problem I had, is that it really wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I could see people in my office who were getting out-of-town buyers, you know, big listing inventories. I had no idea how they were doing it. And, you know, I felt just really insecure, really inadequate in the position. I felt like a failure. That was kind of scamming it a little bit, because I was just picking up buyers here and there, but I didn't know what I was doing. And that continued for several years. And it wasn't until 2008 when I had to really, kind of buckle down. But I went to my team leader at Keller Williams at the time and just told her I was getting out of the business. And I was going to go get a real job. And, she said, this was over a phone conversation. So she said, Jason, come into the office, meet with me before you make a decision. Let's talk about it. And so I was like, all right, I'll humor her. I'll go into the office and talk to her. So she started talking to me about my issues. And at this time we had one child, another one on the way. And I was freaking out. The phone wasn't ringing. The sky was falling. The world was a terrible place. So she said, well, listen, I'm going to pull up the top 200 in our MLS and let's see what they're doing. And lo and behold, they were still doing transactions. So she just very calmly said, Jason, what's the difference between these agents and you? And I said, Rachel, I have no idea. I'm hoping you're going to tell me. And she said, Jason, she just hit me right between the eyes. She said, Jason, you are not a learning-based realtor. You're not in the office. We never see you unless you're here to pick up a check. You don't go to office meetings. You don't go to, forget the big conferences. I wouldn't even come to a sales meeting. And she said, that's your problem. That is your problem. So, luckily for me, I was in a fragile state of mind, so much so that I was able to humbly receive that information because I was, like I told you guys in the beginning of this interview, is that I was kind of that, self-righteous, ego, jerky, think I know everything type of guy back then. But it took some of these, tragedies in our, in the economy and ups and downs in real estate to kind of get my mind right.
Well, I mean, I'm grateful that you experienced that. I'm sure at the time it was not pleasant to go through. But one thing that you just mentioned, I want to point out is you mentioned time. Like, didn't feel like I had time to attend the meetings that were going to be investing in training you and all that sort of thing. And I'm not trying to point it out because you have a unique situation. I think that's an issue that all of us face. Entrepreneurs, business owners, we never feel like we can slow down to take advantage of investing in our business because we feel like we have to be there present. But you point out a great fact. I'm there all week waiting on Sunday. I got nothing but time.
I had plenty of time, and most of that was spent at my house, hiding from the people in the office because there was just so much ego. And I was just like, I know everything, and you guys are pathetic. You need to be in the office, listening to this lady talk. But I'm at home watching TV at the same time, just so full of stress because I can't really provide in the way that I, feel like I should be. And, I had all those people telling me things like, you're going to be awesome, you're going to be great, and not being able to live up those expectations. I was really lost.
So tell me how did you start transitioning from that to someone who started traveling the world? Was it seriously whenever you were in your broker's office and she showed you what the top 200 was doing? Was that the kind of the jumping off point for you?
Yeah. So I started off very, very slow because she broke it down for me and said, listen, there's plenty of things you can do that are low to no cost. So you can watch YouTube videos. You can, at that time, webinars were huge. There were free real estate webinars constantly. And she's like, you can register for these things. Even if you can't attend them, a lot of times they'll send you the recording. There were a few books that she had pointed out, one of which is a famous real estate book that Gary Keller wrote, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which, they give you a copy when you sign up. And I was just like, yeah, this looks like, something for the bookshelf to make it look fancy. So, I actually started reading that book, and I actually, to speed up the process, I invested in the audio discs. And so I was reading it, I was listening to it. I just started immersing myself in anything I could find.
All right. So how did that start to take effect for you? Like, you're doing those small things, and then what was the effect?
The big trigger, the big turning point, the big pivot was when I started making money from what I was doing. I could start to see results from what I was doing. And I naturally gravitated to things that were technology oriented. I really went down the path of the internet lead, and that became something that was really, really attractive to me because I like social media. You know, I liked writing content. I've got some writing abilities, and so when I could write a blog or I could design an ad, you know, and I could come up with little catchy catchphrases to attract buyers on Craigslist or whatever platform I was on, and I could see that these leads were just coming in, I was like, wow, I can do this. You know, I'm starting to, you know, have conversations with out-of-town buyers, and eventually the leads I was generating got to be too much. Like there was way too many for me to handle. So that's when I started getting into the team building mode. But that's what I look for in, you know, agents that I mentor is the goal, the hope is that they will get that $5,000 check or $10,000 check, or just start generating leads and start getting hooked on learning.
So what was the one event that you traveled to that kind of helped set this ablaze? I mean, was there any one specific one like that I know that you've gone, you know, Joey's talked about how you've traveled the West Coast, the East Coast, which is really unique as a realtor because a lot of times people, they just go to the classroom inside their, you know, their office. But you've said that's not enough for me. I need to go other places. So was there something that you saw when you were out and about that was kind of different than what was being talked about at home base, or did you find that a lot of the information was the same?
Yeah, you know, it's just, and Tony Robbins it says that we need to be attending like one big live immersive, you know, conference or seminar experience per quarter.
Mm.
And I didn't know this at the time, but I just heard him say that like last year. And he's so right. There's just a different experience that you get from being there. It's more the relationships that you can build because, you know, you can watch, most of these events have a live stream. You can buy the live stream. You can buy the recorded version after the conference for a fraction of the cost that it takes to get there. But there's something about, and I've heard one of my current coaches right now say this a number of times, that the more you pay, the more you pay attention.
Mm.
So when you are having to pay for that hotel room, pay for that plane ticket, you know, you are highly invested. I have bought several replays that I have never watched.
Yeah.
You know, I went to 10X with Grant Cardone's 10X last year, bought the replay because I wanted to like reinvest in the content that I'd gotten there live. Haven't touched it. And I bought several from his years past of his events and haven't watched those either. So if you're not very disciplined, like I lack that discipline to go back, and as we've talked prior, I'm just really overwhelmed by content. To me, it's just when I am there, and it's something about being there too that gets my creative juices flowing, the ideas flowing. But I would have to say, if I had to pinpoint one thing, it would be the relationships that I've made with people while I'm there.
So that's great. And I love how you're pointing out the positives, but for some of the folks listening, let's say they're an entrepreneur, they're running their business. And I know I struggle with this, Russ, I know you do, but what would you say to them when they say, you know, I really can't afford to be away from my business? Like right now, everything's really dependent on me. I can't take off these 3 days in the middle of the week. Things just can't run without me.
You know, and it's easy for me to answer that question in the position that I'm in right now, you know, because I have the money to, you know, set aside at a minimum $50,000 a year to go to these events. And it should be a symbol to people listening that, you know, I've reached this position in my business, but I still continue to invest. But my initial immediate gut response is you can't afford not to. When they say I can't afford to, I immediately respond, you can't afford not to. And I really, really believe that they can't afford not to. The other, you know, it's like they can't afford it money-wise, or they can't afford just to be away from their business. And to me, that's just a very fixed mindset. Because these people, yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Well, no, I hate to stop you there, but that's the part that I think is missed in being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, being self-employed. is that you're no longer an employee. You literally make money through the efforts that you're creating. But if you're not learning, you're going backwards. So the investment that we have to make and go into those things, to me, when I hear someone say, I don't think I can afford it, I say, you're in the wrong business.
I think that's a really, really good point because, we had a speaker in our Fairhope office last week. His name is Lou Vickery. He's used to be he's ex-pro baseball player. He's written like 14 books, been a radio host, all these different things. But he was talking about if you don't love what you do to the point where you're excited about it, like you're excited to go to work, you can't wait to tell people what you do for a living, because I know a lot of realtors that are just angry and bitter and just maybe it's just a means to an end. It's just a way to get a paycheck, and if those people said, I can't afford it, I'd probably say, you're probably right. You can't, because if somebody is fired up and they're filled with passion, like I just felt like I had no choice. I can't survive in the 9-to-5 world. I can't survive in a cubicle. I can't survive being trapped to a desk. That is just, I would just rather not live. And, I'm also, like I mentioned before when we started this interview, not the smartest guy in the room. So, I had to realize that if I couldn't make this work, I didn't know what else I was going to do. I didn't have a whole lot to fall back on. See, I think I graduated Auburn with literally like a 2.0. My options were very, very limited. But I really enjoyed this. And if I've come in contact with somebody who shares that passion for the industry, I will tell them to put it on their credit card. If they can't afford it, I'll say, put that on your credit card and come with me.
Well, make it happen.
Well, yeah. it comes back to this. The thought process needs to take a different change from this is an expense that I can either afford or not afford to an investment that will catapult my business. Because if you're not treating it as an investment, then when you show up to the event, how do you treat it? You don't treat it like I've got to make the most out of every minute here. I've got to make the most. And we're going to get to that in a minute, Jason.
Yeah.
I want to hear your best practices of how, when you go to these events, how you get the most out of them. But that's just a dramatic change. It's not an expense, and it's an investment. And then the other thing, I'm just going to make a comment here, I guess, but one of the things that really challenges me is this only helps your why, right? If my why is to be the best father, the best dad, to make impact on others, then going to these events makes me a better version of me, right? I mean, how have you seen that happen in your own life, Jason?
Well, it's really kind of eerie that you bring that up because I was interviewing another agent this morning from Jacksonville, Florida, who said she actually found her why at an event that we were both at. That before she went to that event, I think this was one of her first big events. This event changed her life. I got to tag you in this interview that I did because it's in my private Facebook page for Impact Agents. But it was a David Goggins. He was keynoting this particular day of the event. And I don't know if David Goggins is on your radar, but he's got a book out right now, amazing public speaker, a little rough around the edges, drops a lot of F-bombs, but his story is like insane. Like when you hear his story, you're like, it just makes you feel like you're like stupid blessed when you hear that he's like the only Navy SEAL in SEAL history that's like been kicked out of SEAL camp like 3 times and still gone through and actually made it through.
Oh, wow.
And he runs like 100-mile marathons and stuff. I mean, he's a little cuckoo, but he changed her life in like the biggest way possible. Just to try to give you guys a quick rundown of this, but she was getting out of bed like 6:37, just was starting her day off all wrong. So, after she left the event, she committed to a morning routine. She committed to exercise because David Goggins big into exercise and how that can be the catalyst for, these cognitive benefits and just not only health benefits, but the way you feel and your confidence. Well, her husband was not on board with this morning routine and all this exercise at first, but got on board with it a few weeks into it and started exercising, and they both got into their top physical shape. And so the event was in August. just before, like early December, late November, he gets in a devastating car accident where he barely survived. And the doctor said that if he hadn't been in the physical condition that he was in, he would not have survived.
Wow.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, it's had these huge impacts, on her life. So it can absolutely affect your why. It can absolutely make you a better person. Just hearing these stories that people tell from the stage. A big part of what Tom Ferry does at his summit is allows agents, just like, me, just regular old agents, get up and tell about stories of adversity they've overcome. And just little things like that can trigger something in your mind that says, you know what? I'm not living up to my full potential. I can do better than this.
Well, you can, and you get to find things. Here's a story, Jason, and this is kind of unique because what we do here at Wealth Without Wall Street, that a lot of this is predicated behind a concept called infinite banking. And that's what is the catapult to everything that we do with real estate and business ownership and lending. It comes off using this one tool, life insurance, with the concept of infinite banking. I'm sitting in 2008, the end of 2008, and you know where the market is, right? It's not pretty. It doesn't look good. And my wife opens a dental practice December 2008. So she leaves a job where she was getting paid as a dentist to go into business ownership and to start a practice from scratch with no patients, no money. And here I am. I'm 4 years into the financial world, and the market has just crashed. So you get the idea that there's not a whole lot of money and a whole lot of confidence going on around in my household.
Perfect timing.
There's this conference that happened every January, and sometimes it'd be in New Orleans, sometimes it was in Phoenix or Orlando. And I enjoyed going because it kind of motivated me. But this, conference that was coming up in January, I just was like, I don't think I can go. I mean, my wife is working in this practice. I need to be here at the office to make every dollar I can, not to mention my clients are kind of on edge as I am of what are we going to do in 2009 to make up for what happened in 2008. And I almost didn't go to the conference that I met Nelson Nash at.
Wow.
The conference that I had a friend of mine who said, look, I know that you're trying your best to be, a good financial steward of your money with everything going on with your wife. You get yourself here. You can stay in my room. I'll even buy you lunch. And I was like, sold. But I literally almost did not go. And that was the meeting where I met Nelson Nash. That's where I read his book on the way home from that conference. That changed the trajectory. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now had I not gone to that event.
Yeah, because I after that, of course, I became Russ's client, Jason. So, and then 4 years later, I don't know, this has kind of dawned on me, Russ, where did I really feel the call to come join you to do this business? Was at a conference, another event. I mean, isn't that ridiculous?
There's what you said about the why. And here's the funny part. Nelson Nash was in our office today, Jason, and he said this. He said, if we put too much emphasis on the how and the what, we will lose sight of the why.
Oh, I love that.
And that's when we go to things and we just go there willing to learn, willing to be humble, that we don't have it all figured out. Because I'd been to the same event for 4 straight years before that January 2009, and I actually had heard Nelson Nash speak for 10 or 15 minutes, but I was not humbled. I had all of that ego that you were talking about earlier. I had all the answers. I didn't need to hear anything that was there. I'd already had it figured out. But when I heard it with different ears, because I was listening, it was amazing what I learned and what I've been able to help others learn because of it. So it's crazy that we're talking about, how we invest in ourselves, but ultimately how that's transforming our life. So let's talk about going to an event. I'm going to kind of hear some of your best practices.
Yeah.
So, what would you say, you said a second ago that you spend $50,000 every single year. That's what you put aside. So, and I know that you're impacting agents' lives and you're teaching them, you're pouring into them. How do you help anyone kind of they're going to sit down and say, okay, this is going to be the year 2019. I'm going to start investing in myself. How do you help them come up with the number, what they should spend on events or things to go to as far as training?
Well, it's very key. Something that you just mentioned there is that I really feel like this should be part of their business plan. So they should sit down in October, November, and start planning out where they're going to go the following year. Most of these events are announced well in advance, and so you've got plenty of time. Some of these events have payment plans. Most of these events have early bird pricing plans. So the kind of sooner you get on them, jump on these events and register, the better a lot of times for you financially. For my real estate team, just as an example, I require that they go to one event a year, and they can pick whatever event they want to go to, but they have to go to one event out of town. And I go to so many events that I can kind of direct them where to go. And we have become partial to Tom Ferry's event, but I'm a big fan of, our website company that we generate all these leads through does their own conference. I'm big on things that are completely outside of the sales realm, like going to a mindset event, going to a Tony Robbins event. So a lot of times they will say, look, I need help in this area. I need help in that area. I need mindset. I need my listing presentations off, and I will kind of guide them in that respect. But one point that I make with them that is, that does cause me a little bit of blowback, but I really think it's true because the slippery slope of these events is overwhelm. And, I call it like the fried egg effect. It's day 2. I've got so many ideas going on in my head that I just feel like I need to leave. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll leave an event early and just go walk around this city that I'm in because I've got all these ideas that I can't handle much more. So I think it's important. I advise people to literally keep their expectations low because they're either going to get overwhelmed by, all the ideas and all the content and not know where to start. They're going to be like, I can't implement all this. So I'm going to have this paralysis by analysis. The other side of this is that people are looking for a magic bullet, especially in real estate. They're like, oh, I'm going to go to this conference Jason told me to go to. I'm going to invest this money. Then they come back pissed off at me because nobody gave them a magic bullet that's going to, just magically make them a millionaire. So, I just caution those people, go keep your expectations low. You really need just one good idea, one solid thing that motivates you, that's going to move the needle forward in your business to make it worthwhile. Don't just go looking to come back with this bag full of tricks because we all know those tricks don't exist.
Do you have a best practice in light of that, Jason? Because I think you actually have spoken to me offline about we don't have an information problem. We have an implementation problem. Mm-hmm. So just in light of that, what you're talking about with events, is there a best practice that you utilize to, once you come back, that you implement those ideas, or how do you go about doing that?
I really think, that you have to, it's all about accountability. So a best practice for me would be to go to one of these events with an accountability partner. So I'm sure if you and Russ go to events together, you're like, hey, you pick out, I think it's a good idea to come up with 1 to 5 things, like no more than probably 5. Like, here's what we're going to implement. And you guys hold each other accountable to get those things implemented in your business. That's really, really good. That is a best practice to have somebody, or if I go to these events, I'll bring them back to my team. We'll decide which ones we're going to implement, and then we'll hold each other accountable to get that done. I really feel like, that whole information versus implementation is slowly becoming like my big mantra right now, because we just do, you can literally sit at home. If you're disciplined enough, all you need to do is everything you need to make 6 figures in the real estate industry is on YouTube. So you really, if you just become just a disciplined, hardcore investor in YouTube, all the information is there. But what we have is an implementation problem. You're not going to make the relationships with people because, it's really easy for me to talk from a stage and go, here's what you need to be doing, guys. And they're all charged up. And this happened to me. And I get back to the office and I'm like, what did he say again? I look back at my notes and I go, oh, my notes, there's no roadmap. So I wouldn't know what to do. But relationships that I've made at these conferences, I can call somebody and go, all right, so how can we figure out how to get this implemented in my business? So you either need to have a mastermind group, have an accountability partner, build relationships at these conferences that are looking to do or take their business in the same direction you are, and lean on each other in that way.
Well, I think that was something I learned early on, is to take somebody to lunch or take someone to dinner at one of these events, because the best way to build a relationship is over food, right?
Oh,
and,
I second that.
And we know the stallion loves to eat, but here's the thing that I learned is that I will forget a lot of the things that were said, and I don't take notes. I mean, I don't take.
You refuse.
I feel like I'm going to miss it if I'm typing, so I'm going to listen, but then I forget what was said. But if I build a relationship with you at that event, at a lunch, for instance, then I'm going to call you afterwards, and I'm going to say, Jason, now tell me, what's the one thing that you're implementing from that event we were at? And that ongoing relationship, I think, is what you were saying. It becomes an accountability partner, because in that conversation, if we're challenging each other, what are we applying from the event we went to, then there's that constant replay that actually does happen, because we buy those videos. And I'm like you, I've bought those videos plenty of times and never went back and watched them. But I've gone back and listened to the person who I was at the event with, because we get on a phone call maybe once a month.
Yeah, it may be important to just mention that, and people are shocked to hear this, but I am incredibly introverted. So if I know you, I'm familiar with you, then I'm very outgoing. But if you guys were to invite me up to an event at your office and I knew just you two guys and I didn't know anybody else in the room, I'll be extremely quiet. And so early on, I would go to these events. And as soon as it was over, every break, I was up in my hotel room. I didn't, the happy hours, the dinners, the coffee meetings, all that stuff, didn't do it. I was just a hermit in my hotel room for the longest time. And through coaching and just people pulling me out of my comfort zone, I realized that really the good stuff is exactly what you're talking about. So much so that before we go to events now, we don't go to events without those appointments scheduled, those lunch appointments, dinner appointments, coffee appointments, meetups, little bitty masterminds on something, a topic in the real estate industry. That, I think, is where the good stuff is, because what you hear, Russ, and what Joey hears maybe is something completely different than what I hear. And when we get together and collaborate, to me, the collaboration is the sweet stuff.
All right. So that's a great takeaway, a good best practice, if you will, is kind of planning ahead, not just showing up, reacting to the event, but having some things set up in advance. What are some other best practices, takeaways, things that you've used as you've gone around the country now, attending all these different events? Any other little takeaways?
Well, a big thing that I do is, and I think people should be doing more of this, but you guys may understand this, that you retain a lot more of the knowledge that you teach. And so I like to bring back this knowledge and impart it on others, and it helps me retain it at a much higher level. And I don't think people realize, they go, oh, well, Jason, that's easy. You have 100 agents that, so if you have one of your lunch and learns, you're going to have a captive audience of at least 35 people. So it's easy for you. But what I'm talking about is making a video like this on Zoom and putting it out there on social media or YouTube, helping, your colleagues, your peers, your fellow insurance agents, real estate agents, financial, planners, and all these things move the needle, because that's how referrals are exchanged. It's really what one of the speakers at my event, Sharon, calls the goodwill river. So you're just putting out this goodwill all the time, and it's going to come back to you in the form of the law of reciprocity, because I'm gonna have an impact on somebody that I don't even know, and they're going to just instinctively want to repay me for that gift. So that, to me, is a big thing. Agents helping agents. I interviewed an agent from the Boston area earlier this week, I believe it was, or towards the end of last week, and he said he can attribute $250,000 in income into his business last year from referrals. Oh, and wow. The way they generate that is just that goodwill river. Anytime they learn something and they test it first. So they implement it. If it brings in leads, brings in transactions, then they go tell the world. And that's a completely different mentality, especially in the real estate industry, where if we're doing something secret, we're keeping it all bundled in. We don't want anybody to know. But literally, when you get out of competition into collaboration, your whole world opens up.
Yeah, there's so much good for that. Well, this is really cool, because I think when you are able to transform yourself out of this kind of like selfish mentality that I'm in the scarcity mindset into a world of, man, there's an abundant amount of information. There's an abundant amount of people to help. If I just keep teaching, I keep learning, then not only am I going to be able to help a lot of people around me, but man, I'm going to prosper in this environment as well. And we see that with you, because now you've taken this to a different level. You've started putting on your own events, which is pretty cool. So I do want to kind of get a sneak peek for those of us who attend lots of events, maybe tips or tricks that we should be using as we buy into these masterminds, because you're on the backside of that, helping put these together. Like what are some opposite sides that you're seeing that as just someone who's putting events together now?
Well, it's extremely hard. I mean, I'm a little bit over my head, just to be like totally honest, or a lot over my head. But I just believe in it so much, and it's been so transformational for me that I really wanted to bring something that was in the South. I want to see more events in the South, all across the Southeast. And I want to start, if people, and I can understand how daunting it is to get on a plane, because like we've talked about before, these events are either East Coast, you either got to go to New York or Boston, or you got to go to Las Vegas or Los Angeles. Typically every now and then they'll be in New Orleans, or they'll be in Atlanta or Orlando. But a lot of people are it's just so easy to choose the excuse over the result. And I want to kind of take some of that objection off the table and say, listen, I'm an hour and a half ride. I'm a 3-hour car ride. I'm a 5-hour car ride. You can come to New Orleans to my event and listen to these people that are going to change your life. I've seen it happen to myself. It's happened with you guys. We're talking about an agent that I interviewed just today who told me about something that not only changed her life, but saved her husband's life going to a stinking conference. So I know this stuff works. But it is a heck of a lot of work trying to put one of these things on. But I'm just committed to it.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to hear what you're doing. You're helping grow others, and we're growing along with you. And I think if we're not growing, I think the Stallion had something as we were in kind of pre-show talking. He said, if you're not growing, you're dying. Is that what you said, Stallion?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just think it's a constant focus on becoming the better person. It's got to be that. Otherwise, you're stagnant. And I think, Russ and I were talking about this ahead of time, Jason, but there's this new AT&T ad. I haven't even seen it, Russ. You want to tell them what you're talking about being complacent or whatever?
Well, I mean, you've probably seen these ads. You've seen all the we're okay, just okay ads.
Jason? Right. Yeah.
I mean, they're attacking what is existing in us as human beings. As the most part is that we get complacent. We're okay, whether it's the doctor walking in like, guess who just got reinstated, or like the guy with the brakes who's like, yeah, we're okay. Like we got a saying around here, if
I love those commercials.
If the brakes don't stop it, something else will. I mean, right? They're funny. What they're attacking is the complacency within us, that we can't be just okay. And I think that's what we've talked about. That's what you've hammered home and helping us think through, like, we can't be just okay as it comes to what we do. We've got to, our business, our customers, our families, they deserve better. They deserve a better us. And us improving through events is going to allow us to serve others better, and it's going to help us to reward the family and reward everybody else through our efforts. So thank you for sharing and what you're doing with Impact Agent. For those who happen to be in the real estate community, because that's obviously the area that you specialize in, and those that you're serving, like, help people understand how they can find out more about what you're doing and even be able to attend the events that you have going on.
Well, it's pretty easy. So they can go to impactagentconference.com. And I would also note that impactagentuniversity.com, they all go to the same place. But what we are building, and we're close to launching this, and Joey is an Impact Agent University instructor. He's already done a class for this, but we've run into so many hiccups, but we're really close to launching this sucker. Is that we're going to have an online university where people can go and find free content, and it's going to be a wide array of information from health and wellness, meditation, nutrition, then prospecting and scripting and team building and all these things. So realtors have a place where they can go, find these categories, plug and play what they need in their business right that second, and find the information at their fingertips. And what I love about it is that people that are just regular, ordinary realtors, it's not some people, because a lot of times these people on these stage, they seem larger than life. And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so did that. I can never get the Tom Ferry status. He's this icon. And it's much more relatable when you get somebody on the stage who is just like them. They're like, wow, they're just a real person like me. So it's going to be realtors who are crushing it in small towns, big cities that nobody's even heard of, and that are doing it at a really high level in a really innovative way, most of which, if not all of which, are well coached and are learning-based agents, and they're doing this. They're participating in the university because they're paying it forward. Somebody mentored them, somebody coached them, somebody trained them, somebody poured into them, and so they're just giving back. And so in addition to the Impact Agent University Conference in New Orleans, Louisiana, we're looking at putting together another event in October where agents can come and recommit at that kind of 6-month level. Again, that accountability piece comes in. And we can kind of say, all right, well, what did you do in between now and the conference? And then where do you plan to go from here? What are your goals? Because October for us is business planning month. And I think that's going to be key. And then right after the conference, I'm going to be launching there will be an announcement about my coaching business.
Oh, wow. Well, cool. Well, a lot of stuff going on. Thank you so much for stopping in with the show. We really appreciated having you with us.
Man, it was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you so much.
All right.